Los Angeles greeted Tuesday morning with its usual hum of freeways and smog hanging over the city like a gray blanket. In a small, one-bedroom apartment in Hollywood, Alex Taylor sat in front of two monitors, immersed in her work on a logo for a Silicon Valley startup. At 28, she earned a living as a freelance designer, which allowed her to work from home and avoid many uncomfortable questions about her past. The sound of a notification from her Messenger app distracted her from the screen. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw the sender's name, Ryan McGee. They had met 3 months ago on a dating site, and since then, their correspondence had become a daily ritual. Alex knew she was playing with fire, but she couldn't stop. "Good morning, beautiful. How did you sleep?" he wrote. Alex smiled as she typed her reply. Ryan was so ordinary. He worked as a foreman on a construction site in Waco, loved football and barbecues, and drove a pickup truck. He was the complete opposite of the men from Los Angeles she had dated before. Perhaps that was what attracted her most, his simplicity and sincerity. But there was one problem. Ryan didn't know about her past. In her dating profile, she identified herself as a woman, which was technically true. She had been living that way for the past 5 years. Sex reassignment surgery, hormone therapy, changing her documents. That whole long journey was now in the past. But every time she talked to Ryan, she felt the lie between them growing. 1,000 miles to the east, in Waco, Texas, Ryan McGee stood on the construction site of a new residential complex and checked the work of the crew. At 32, he was one of the youngest foremen in the company, which was not easy for him. The workers were mostly older, and only his professionalism and fairness helped him earn their respect. "Hey, boss!" Juan, one of the bricklayers, called out to him. "Your phone's ringing for the 3rd time." Ryan took off his protective helmet and took his phone out of his work jacket pocket. It was a message from Alex. His face softened. Over the past few months, this girl from California had become the brightest spot in his measured life. The photos she sent showed a beautiful woman with chestnut hair and intelligent eyes. Their conversations lasted late into the night, covering everything from favorite movies to plans for the future. Ryan grew up in a conservative Texas family. His father worked in the oil industry. His mother was a homemaker and raised 3 children. Family values, traditional roles for men and women, and faith in God were all part of his worldview. After his divorce 2 years ago, he had hardly dated, focusing instead on his work and recovering from the painful breakup. Alex was different. She was intelligent, creative, and independent. When she talked about her work as a designer or shared her thoughts on the books she had read, Ryan felt that he had finally met a woman who could be his partner, not just a decoration in his life. On the other side of town, at the Waco Police Department, Detective Maria Sanchez was studying files on a domestic violence case. At 40, she was one of the most experienced investigators in the department, specializing in crimes against individuals. 16 years of service had taught her to read people like open books and not to be surprised by the cruelty of which humans are capable. Today, she was questioning a man who had beaten his wife unconscious and then claimed that it was her own fault. It was a typical story: alcohol, jealousy, inability to control emotions. Maria had seen hundreds of cases like this. "Detective Sanchez, the office got a call about a body found in a motel on the outskirts," Sergeant Thompson said, peeking in the door. "What kind of body?" Maria looked up from her papers. "Not clear yet. A maid found it this morning when she came to clean the room. Looks like murder." Maria nodded and put the file aside. Another case. Murders were rare in a small town, but when they happened, they demanded total dedication. She grabbed her jacket and headed for the exit, not knowing that in 3 days she would be investigating one of the most difficult cases of her career. In Los Angeles, Alex finished work and met her best friend, Tommy Harris, at their favorite cafe in West Hollywood. Tommy worked as an IT specialist for a large company and was one of the few people who knew Alex's whole story. "Are you still texting that cowboy from Texas?" he asked, stirring his coffee. "He's not a cowboy. He's a foreman, Alex laughed. And yes, I am. Alex, do you realize what you're getting yourself into? Texas isn't the most tolerant place for people like you. Tommy was right, and Alex knew it. But over the past few months, Ryan had become more than just a virtual acquaintance to her. She was falling in love, and that scared her more than anything. He's a good man, Tommy. Kind, honest, conservative, her friend added. You've seen his social media posts. He supports traditional values, the Republican Party. What will happen when he finds out? Alex fell silent. That question haunted her every day. When exactly should she tell him the truth? On the first date? After a year of dating? Never? Maybe he'll accept me for who I am, she said quietly. Tommy shook his head. Maybe not. And then what? You'll be in a strange city among strangers with a man who feels betrayed. In Waco, Ryan finished his workday and stopped by his sister Jen's house. She lived in a small house with her husband and 2 children and worked as an elementary school teacher. Of all his family members, Ryan had the most trusting relationship with her. You look happy, Jen remarked as she handed him a beer. I met a girl. Online. Jen raised an eyebrow. Really? You, who always said that online dating was for losers? She's special, Jen. Smart. Beautiful. She lives in California and works as a designer. And what next? Long-distance relationships are difficult. Ryan thought about it. Yes, distance was a problem. But the more he got to know Alex, the more he wanted to meet her in person. I'm thinking of inviting her here, for the weekend. Jen looked closely at her brother. After his divorce, he had become withdrawn, focusing only on work. If this girl could bring him back to life, why not? Just be careful, Ryan. People on the internet aren't always what they seem. Late in the evening, Alex sat in her apartment and stared at her phone screen. Ryan had sent her a message an hour ago. I want to see you. Maybe you could come visit me for the weekend. I'll show you the real Texas. Her heart was beating so hard that it seemed to echo throughout the apartment. This was what she had been both afraid of and waiting for at the same time. A chance to turn a virtual relationship into a real one. An opportunity to finally be honest with someone who had become important to her, or a disaster that would destroy everything. Alex walked over to the mirror and looked at her reflection. 5 years ago, she made the most important decision of her life, to become who she felt she was inside. It was painful, expensive, and worth it. Now, she had another decision to make. She picked up her phone and started typing her reply. Alex woke up at 4 in the morning and couldn't get back to sleep. It was still night outside, but her thoughts wouldn't let her rest. Last night, she had sent Ryan a message. Yes, I'll come. I'll book tickets for tomorrow. Now, in the pre-dawn silence of her apartment, she was beginning to doubt her decision. She turned on the coffee maker, opened her laptop, and started looking at flights to Dallas. From there, it was only an hour-and-a-half drive to Waco. Ryan had promised to meet her at the airport. The plan was simple. Fly in on Friday morning, spend the weekend together, fly out on Monday. 3 days to decide whether to continue a relationship that had begun with a half-truth. Her phone vibrated. A message from Ryan. Woke up thinking about you. Can't wait for Friday. Good night, beautiful. Alex smiled, despite her anxiety. Ryan was so caring, even from a distance. Over the past few months, she had grown accustomed to his messages from morning to night, to how he took an interest in her work, her mood, her plans. When she had a cold a month ago, he was more concerned than some of her ex-boyfriends who lived in the same city. But what would happen when he found out the truth? Alex went to the closet and started sorting through her clothes. What should she take with her to Texas? She wanted to look feminine but not provocative, conservative but attractive. Everything seemed either too revealing or too modest for a meeting with the man who was about to learn about her past. In Waco, Ryan had been up for an hour, even though it was still 2 hours before the start of the workday. He couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts about the upcoming weekend. He was making plans, where to show Alex the city, where to take her for dinner, what places she might like. Waco wasn't a tourist destination, but the city had its own atmosphere, its own history. Ryan made coffee and sat down at the kitchen table with his to-do list. Clean the house. Although he kept it tidy, the presence of a woman required special attention to detail. Buy groceries. Alex wrote that she liked to cook, so maybe they would cook something together. Fill up the car, wash it. First impressions are important. He looked at Alex's photo on his phone screen. Beautiful features, intelligent eyes, a mysterious smile. Over the months they had been communicating, he had learned a lot about her. That she was born in Oregon, moved to California to study and stayed to work. That she had a complicated relationship with her parents, who didn't understand her choice to live independently. That she dreamed of opening her own design studio someday. But there were also some gaps. Alex never talked about her past relationships in detail, evaded questions about her childhood, and changed the subject when the conversation turned to family. Ryan chalked it up to natural caution. After all, they had only known each other for 3 months, and only virtually at that. The phone rang. Jen. Hey bro, how are the preparations for the meeting going? Fine. I'm a little nervous. That's natural. The first meeting is always exciting. Have you decided where she'll stay? Ryan thought for a moment. He assumed Alex would stay with him, but he hadn't said so directly. Maybe he should book her a hotel room. On the other hand, after months of close communication, it would be strange to keep his distance. I think I'll offer her to stay with me. I have a guest room. Okay. The main thing is not to rush things. Give her time to settle in. After talking to his sister, Ryan felt more confident. Jen was right. He needed to act according to circumstances and not make too many specific plans. In Los Angeles, Alex met Tommy for lunch at a small restaurant near his office. He immediately noticed her excitement. Have you really decided to go? The tickets are already bought. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. Tommy put down his fork and looked at his friend intently. Alex, I don't want to be a killjoy, but have you thought about the consequences? What if he reacts badly? What if he reacts well? Alex tried to feign optimism she didn't feel. Tommy, I'm tired of living in constant fear. Sooner or later, you have to take a chance. But why him? You could date men from here, from Los Angeles. There's more understanding and tolerance here. Alex knew her friend was right. She had a better chance of being accepted in California. But that was precisely what scared her about the local men. Too easy acceptance sometimes seemed superficial. Ryan was real, sincere. If he accepted her, it would mean a lot. He's special, Tommy. I've never felt so comfortable with a man before. Even virtually, what if he doesn't accept you? You'll be alone, in a strange city, with a broken heart. Alex picked up her phone and showed her friend Ryan's latest message. Counting down the hours until we meet. I want to give you a real hug. See? He's kind and caring. Maybe his feelings will be stronger than his prejudices. Tommy sighed. Okay. But promise me, if anything goes wrong, call me right away. Anytime, day or night. And have a backup plan. I promise. That evening, Alex packed her suitcase, carefully selecting each item. Jeans and blouses for walking around town, a dress for dinner at a restaurant, comfortable shoes. At the last minute, she added her favorite book, To Kill a Mockingbird, by Harper Lee. If the conversation turned to literature, it could be a good topic of discussion. But the main question was, when to tell Ryan the truth? On the first night? Wait until Sunday? Let the relationship develop naturally and then find the right moment? Ryan spent Thursday evening in Waco tidying up the house. He vacuumed, washed the windows, and changed the bedding in the guest room. He stocked the fridge with breakfast items. Alex had mentioned that she liked French toast. He even bought flowers, a small bouquet of yellow roses, to greet her at the airport. After finishing cleaning, Ryan sat down on the couch and opened their correspondence. Hundreds of messages over 3 months. Photos they had exchanged, plans, dreams. Alex talked about her work with such enthusiasm that Ryan began to understand the world of design and creativity better. She was interested in his work, asking questions about construction that showed genuine curiosity rather than politeness. He scrolled through their latest messages. Alex wrote, "I'm a little nervous. What if you don't like me in real life?" "Impossible," he replied at the time. "You are beautiful not only on the outside, but also on the inside. That's what matters." Now, rereading his words, Ryan felt that he had spoken sincerely. Over the past few months, he had gotten to know Alex as an intelligent, sensitive, creative woman. Appearance was important, but it wasn't the most important thing. Detective Sanchez stayed late at the office, finishing up a report on a domestic violence case. The husband who had beaten his wife had been given a restraining order and mandatory counseling sessions. It was standard procedure, but it didn't always work. Too often, she saw women who returned to their abusers or men who ignored court orders. "Detective, are you still here?" Sergeant Thompson asked, peeking into the office. Finishing up the report. "I want to start with a clean slate tomorrow." "I understand. By the way, the case with the body in the motel turned out to be an overdose. A college kid, heroin. His parents are in shock. They thought he only smoked marijuana." Maria nodded. "Another family destroyed by drugs. In a small town, every overdose death was a personal tragedy that affected everyone." She gathered her papers and got ready to go home. Tomorrow would be a normal day. Routine stuff, minor offenses, maybe a burglary or a bar fight. Serious crimes were rare in Waco, and Maria was glad for that. Late that night, Alex lay in bed, but sleep would not come. Tomorrow at this time, she would be in Texas with the man who had come to mean so much to her. Fear and anticipation mingled in her chest, creating a painful tension. She picked up her phone and looked through Ryan's social media profile again. Photos from work, with friends, family pictures, the ordinary life of an ordinary American. No signs of particular tolerance or, conversely, aggressive intolerance. Just a man who grew up in a conservative environment. Ryan's last message came an hour ago. "Good night. Tomorrow, at this time, you'll be here." "I can't believe this is really happening." "Me neither," she wrote in reply, putting much more meaning into these words than the recipient could understand. Alex closed her eyes and tried to imagine tomorrow. The airport, the meeting, the first few minutes alone with the man she had talked to for hundreds of hours but had never seen in person. Would they have the same ease of communication? The same closeness? The plane began its descent over Dallas on Friday at 10:30 in the morning. Alex pressed her forehead against the window, watching the endless Texas plains spread out beneath the wing. Her heart was beating so hard that she was sure her seatmates could hear it. She clutched her phone with Ryan's latest message. Left for the airport. "I'll give you a real hug in an hour." The 3-hour flight gave her time to change her mind hundreds of times. Every bump in the air seemed like a sign. Maybe she should turn around and fly back. But it was too late. In an hour, she would meet the man who, in 3 months, had become closer to her than most people in her real life. The plane touched down on the runway at Dallas/Fort Worth Airport with a characteristic jolt. Alex gathered her things with trembling hands and headed for the exit. In the mirror of the ladies' room, she touched up her makeup one last time, combed her hair, and checked how her blouse fit. She looked good, but that didn't calm her nerves. A man with a bouquet of yellow roses was waiting for her at the exit from the security area. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a clean plaid shirt and jeans. When their eyes met, Ryan's face lit up with a smile. "Alex?" "That's me," she said, her voice quieter than she wanted it to be. Ryan approached and awkwardly hugged her, handing her the flowers. "Welcome to Texas. How was your flight?" "Fine. Thank you for the roses, they're beautiful." Standing next to him, Alex realized that the photos didn't do him justice. Ryan was even more masculine than he appeared in the pictures. His hands were large and calloused from physical labor, he smelled of wood and cologne, and he walked with confidence. Everything about him radiated a traditional masculinity that both attracted and frightened her. "Let's go to the car." "It'll take an hour and a half to get to Waco, so we'll have time to talk," Ryan said, taking her suitcase. Ryan's pickup truck was exactly as she had imagined it, a blue Ford F-150 with leather seats and the smell of new upholstery. A hard hat and tools lay in the back seat. A real Texan's real Texan car. "What kind of music do you like?" he asked, starting the engine. "Anything. You choose." Country music began to play, not too loud so as not to interfere with conversation. Ryan was a good driver, maneuvering confidently through heavy traffic as he left the airport and got onto the highway. "It's strange to see you here," he said, glancing at Alex. "We've been talking on the phone for 3 months, and now you're here." "It's strange for me too." In a good way. They talked about trivial things, the flight, the weather, plans for the weekend. But Alex felt an underlying tension. Every word, every gesture was analyzed by her inner critic. Was she sitting femininely enough? Was her voice too low? Had he noticed anything suspicious? "Tell me about your city," she asked, distracting herself from her anxious thoughts. Ryan's face lit up. Waco isn't the most touristy place, but it has character. Founded in 1849, it was an important river port for a long time. Now it's better known for Baylor University and, well, that cult thing in the 90s. Alex remembered the Davidians, the 1993 siege, the tragedy that made the city famous throughout the country. Not the most pleasant association. "But everything's calm now," Ryan hastened to add. "It's a normal American city. Good people, family values. I think you'll like it, family values." Alex tensed up. What did Ryan mean by that? Traditional roles for men and women? Conservative views on sexuality and gender? Waco greeted them with midday sun and the measured rhythm of a provincial town. Ryan drove Alex through the center, showing her the sights. The courthouse, the historic bridge over the Brazos River, the Baylor University campus. "Hungry?" he asked. "I know a place that serves the best barbecue in the area." The restaurant turned out to be a typical Texas establishment. Wooden tables, bull horns on the walls, and photos of local celebrities. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with combed back hair, smiled warmly at Ryan. "Hi, sweetie. Long time no see. Is this the girl from California?" Alex blushed. So Ryan had been telling his friends about her. "Meet Dolores. She's been working here for 20 years and knows all the town gossip," Ryan said with a laugh. "Nice to meet you," Alex said, extending her hand. Dolores shook her hand and looked her over carefully. "Pretty." Ryan's lucky. "What would you like to order?" They ordered the house special ribs and country-style potatoes. While they waited for their order, Ryan talked about his work and the projects he was working on. Alex listened, trying to focus on his words rather than her growing anxiety. "How does your family feel about you dating a girl from California?" she asked. "My sister is happy that I've finally met someone. My parents, well, they're worried. They say California girls are too free-spirited." Alex almost choked on her water. "What do you think?" "I think people are different everywhere, and I like smart women even if they think differently." The food was really delicious, but Alex could hardly taste it. She watched Ryan, studied his gestures, his manner of speaking, trying to understand what kind of person was sitting across from her. Kind, sincere, a little old-fashioned. Just the kind of man who could be a wonderful partner for the right woman. But was she the right woman? After lunch, they walked around the city center. Ryan showed her the Dr. Pepper Museum. The drink was invented in Waco, antique shops, and an art gallery. It was a typical American city with a rich history and a measured pace of life. "Tomorrow I want to show you Lake Waco," Ryan said as they sat down on a park bench. "It's beautiful there, and you can go boating." "That sounds wonderful." They sat side by side watching the children play on the playground. Couples walked their dogs, and elderly people fed the ducks in the pond. It was an idyllic picture of traditional American life. "Alex," Ryan turned to her, "I want to say that these 3 months have been special for me. After my divorce, I thought I would never meet anyone else. And then you came along." Alex's heart ached. His voice was filled with such sincere emotion, such hope. How could she deceive this man? "For me too," she said quietly. Ryan took her hand. His palm was large, warm, slightly rough from work. "I know it's too early to talk about serious things, but I see you as a woman with whom I could build a future." Alex felt a lump in her throat. The future. He was talking about the future with a woman who was hiding the most important thing about herself from him. "Ryan," she began, but he interrupted her. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pressure you. I just feel so right with you. Do you understand?" She understood, and that's why it was so difficult. In the evening, they arrived at Ryan's house, a small one-story building in a quiet neighborhood. A neat lawn, a porch with a swing, a white picket fence, the American dream in miniature. "Welcome to my home," Ryan said, opening the door. Inside, it was clean and cozy. Leather sofas, a large TV, family photos on the shelves, a masculine interior, but not a bachelor's mess. It was clear that the owner had prepared for his guest's arrival. "I'll show you your room," Ryan led her down the hall. "I hope you'll be comfortable." The guest bedroom was small but cozy. Clean sheets, fresh towels, even a small bouquet of flowers on the nightstand. "Thank you. That's very kind. Make yourself at home. In an hour, we'll go out for dinner. I've booked a table at a nice Italian restaurant." Left alone, Alex sat down on the bed and took out her phone. A message from Tommy. "How's it going? Did you like him?" "Yes, I did." "Too much," she replied. "What now?" "I don't know. I'm scared." "Alex, if you feel something's wrong, leave immediately. Don't take any chances." She turned off her phone without replying. Tommy was a good friend, but he didn't understand. It wasn't that something was wrong. On the contrary, everything was going too well. Ryan was exactly as she had imagined him to be. Kind, caring, sincere, a man you could fall in love with. And that's why the lie was becoming unbearable. Dinner at the Italian restaurant took place in a warm atmosphere. Ryan ordered wine, told funny stories from work, and asked about her projects. There was an ease and naturalness between them that Alex hadn't felt with men in a long time. "You're so real," he said as they shared dessert. "Most of the girls I've dated have played some kind of role. But with you, I can be myself." The irony of the situation was painful. He talked about how real she was, while she was playing the leading role in her own life. "Tell me about your childhood," Alex asked, distracting him from the dangerous topic. Ryan happily talked about his life in a large Texas family, fishing with his father, learning to drive on his grandfather's farm. A traditional American childhood with clear gender roles and conservative values. "What about your childhood?" he asked. Alex froze. What should she say? About how she realized at the age of 6 that she was born in the wrong body. About years of suffering and misunderstanding, about fighting for the right to be herself. Normal. Oregon, a small town. Nothing special. Brothers? Sisters? "No, I'm an only child." Ryan nodded, not noticing the hesitation. But Alex noticed and felt her face flush. They walked home. The restaurant was not far from Ryan's house. It was a warm evening with a starry sky and quiet streets in the sleeping city. It was a romantic setting, which made the lie even more unbearable. "Alex," Ryan stopped. "Can I kiss you?" She looked into his eyes and saw sincerity, tenderness, hope. How could she refuse this man? "You can," The kiss was soft, cautious. Ryan kissed her, as if she were fragile, precious. And at that moment, Alex realized she was in love. Truly, deeply in love with a man who didn't know the most important thing about her. When they went to their separate rooms, Alex lay in the dark for a long time, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow would be a new day, another 24 hours of deception, another 24 hours when she could pretend to be an ordinary woman who had met a good man. Saturday began with breakfast, which Ryan prepared himself: French toast, bacon, and freshly brewed coffee. Alex woke up to the smells coming from the kitchen and felt at home for the first time in a long time. "Good morning, beautiful." Ryan smiled when she appeared in the kitchen in her bathrobe. "How did you sleep?" "Great. It smells delicious." They ate breakfast while discussing their plans for the day. Ryan suggested going to Lake Waiko, boating, and having a picnic. Simple pleasures that seemed incredibly romantic to Alex after months of city life. "I have a surprise for you," Ryan said, finishing his coffee. "I booked us a cabin on the lake for tonight." "I thought it would be romantic." Alex felt her stomach tighten. A romantic night alone meant greater intimacy, and intimacy meant more opportunities for the truth to slip out. "Sounds wonderful," she said, feigning enthusiasm. Lake Waco turned out to be a picturesque place with clear water and wooded shores. Ryan rented a small motorboat, and they spent the day cruising around the lake, swimming and sunbathing. Alex was cautious about swimming. She wore a modest swimsuit and quickly threw on a sarong when she got out of the water. "You're very modest," Ryan remarked. "Most California girls I know from TV are more open." "I don't really like to show off," Alex replied, which was true. The day passed in a carefree atmosphere. They talked about music, books, and travel. Ryan told her about his dream of one day opening his own construction company, and Alex told him about her plans to start a design studio. The future seemed bright and full of possibilities. By evening, they arrived at the cabin Ryan had booked. It was a small wooden house on the shore of a lake with a fireplace, a large bed, and panoramic windows. The perfect place for a romantic weekend. "This is amazing," Alex said, admiring the view of the lake in the rays of the setting sun. "I wanted to make this day special," Ryan said, hugging her from behind. "You're special." They had dinner by candlelight, drank wine, and looked at the stars from the porch. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. Alex felt like an actress in a play that would have to end sooner or later. When they went to bed, Alex lay awake for a long time, listening to Ryan's breathing next to her. He didn't insist on intimacy, limiting himself to kisses and hugs. A gentleman to the tips of his fingers. It made the lie even more painful. On Sunday morning, they were getting ready to return to the city. On the way, Ryan stopped at the Sunset Inn, a roadside motel. The place didn't look very presentable, but it was the only one on the way. "Why are we here?" Alex asked. "I want to fill up and use the restroom. 5 minutes." Alex also decided to take advantage of the moment and went into the motel's women's room. In the mirror above the sink, she saw a tired face with smudged makeup and decided to freshen up. She took her makeup bag out of her bag, but it slipped out of her hands and spilled onto the floor. As Alex was picking up the tubes and bottles, she didn't notice a man entering the bathroom. Only when she heard his voice did she look up. "Sorry, I didn't notice you," Ryan began, but stopped short. He stood in the doorway, looking at the items scattered on the floor. Among the usual cosmetics were small bottles of medicine, estrogen, spironolactone, drugs that transgender women take. Alex slowly stood up, holding the empty makeup bag in her hand. Time stood still. "What's this?" Ryan asked, pointing to the medications. "Ryan, I can explain." He bent down and picked up one of the bottles, reading the label. His face changed, first confusion, then realization, then something else. "Are you a man?" His voice was hoarse, unfamiliar. Alex felt her legs go weak. "I was. Before." But now I'm a woman, Ryan. A real woman. A real woman. He took a step back. You've been lying to me for 3 months. I wasn't lying! I'm the same girl you've been texting and talking to. You're a man! Ryan shouted so loudly that Alex flinched. In his eyes, she saw what she feared most: disgust, rage, a feeling of betrayal that was turning into something dangerous. Ryan, please listen to me. Listen to you? I kissed you. I thought about a future with you. He clenched his fists. You made me look like an idiot. Alex backed up against the wall. There was nowhere to go in the small space of the bathroom. Ryan filled the entire doorway, his face contorted with rage. This is perverted. You're sick. No, Ryan, you don't understand. I understand. You're a psychopath who messed with my head, made me feel... He didn't finish the sentence, but his face turned red. Alex realized that something terrible was happening. The man she had fallen in love with was turning into someone else. Please go away, she whispered. I'll explain later, when you calm down. Calm down? Ryan took a step forward. 3 months of my life! 3 months, I thought I had met the woman of my life. There was something primal, animalistic in his voice. Alex could see his hands shaking, the muscles in his neck tensing. He was on the verge of breaking down. Ryan, don't! She raised her hands, trying to protect herself. But it was too late. Maid Consuelo Martinez came to work on Monday morning at 6:30, as usual. At 48, she had been working at the Sunset Inn Motel for 5 years and was used to all kinds of things: drunk guests, drug addicts, prostitutes. The place wasn't the best, but they paid regularly. She began, as always, by checking the rooms that were supposed to have been vacated the day before. Guests usually checked out by 11, but some stayed late or left without returning their keys. Room 12 was on the list of departures, but the door was locked. Consuelo took out a lockpick and opened the lock. The room looked empty. There were no belongings, and the bed was untouched. But something was wrong. The smell. A metallic Swedish smell that she would recognize anywhere. Over the years of working in less than ideal places, she had encountered overdoses, heart attacks, even suicides. Consuelo slowly walked through the room, sniffing. The smell was coming from the bathroom. The door was ajar and a dim light was coming from inside. She pushed the door open and screamed. A young woman in blood-stained clothes was lying on the floor. Her chestnut hair was scattered across the tile floor, her eyes staring lifelessly at the ceiling. A pool of blood spread beneath her head. Consuelo ran out of the room, her hands trembling as she reached for the phone. Detective Maria Sanchez received the call at 7:30 in the morning while she was having breakfast at home before work. A murder at the Sunset Inn Motel. The body of a young woman in the bathroom of room 12. When she arrived at the scene, she found the usual scene. A cordoned-off area, police cars, curious onlookers. Sergeant Thompson met her at the motel entrance. What do we have? Maria asked. The victim is a young woman, about 25 to 30 years old. According to her documents, she is Alex Taylor from Los Angeles. Death was caused by blunt force trauma to the head. Any witnesses? The body was found by a maid this morning. The manager says the room was paid for until Sunday, but no one officially checked out. Maria put on her gloves and entered the room. The crime scene spoke volumes. Cosmetics and medications scattered on the floor, signs of a struggle, blood on the bathroom wall. This was not a robbery. Looks like a hate crime, Thompson said, or domestic violence. Maria nodded as she studied the scene. A medicine bottle lay in the corner of the toilet. She picked it up in its protective packaging and read the label. Estrogen, hormone therapy. Sergeant, check the surveillance footage from the weekend. We need to know who was with the victim. I've already sent the request. There are only cameras in the parking lot, not in the rooms. Maria continued her examination. A woman's purse lay on the floor, its contents partially scattered. The passport confirmed her identity. Alex Taylor, 28, Los Angeles, California. The phone contained hundreds of messages from someone named Ryan McGee. "Find this Ryan McGee," she told Thompson. "It looks like they were close." The crime scene investigator photographed the scene, and the medical examiner examined the body. It was routine work that Maria had done hundreds of times before. But something about this case bothered her. The drugs on the floor, the nature of the injuries, the ferocity of the attack, everything pointed to a hate crime. Someone had learned something about the victim and couldn't accept it. By noon, Maria had a preliminary picture of what had happened. Alex Taylor flew into Dallas on Friday morning and was met by Ryan McGee, a local resident and construction foreman. Airport cameras confirmed this. They spent the weekend together, and on Sunday, something went wrong. Motel surveillance camera footage showed a blue Ford pickup truck arriving around noon on Sunday. 2 people entered the motel, but only one left, a man who was difficult to see in the footage. "Did you find out McGee's address?" Maria asked. "Yes, he lives at 47 Maple Street. Do you want us to bring him in?" "Not yet. I'll talk to him at home first. Maybe he can explain what happened." Maria knew that in cases like this, it was important to proceed with caution. If McGee was the killer, scaring him off would complicate the investigation. But if he was just a witness, an aggressive approach could ruin any cooperation. She got into her patrol car and drove to Maple Street. Her intuition told her that this case would not be easy. A young woman from California, a conservative Texan, a secret that led to tragedy. It was a story she had seen too many times in different variations. The house at 47 Maple Street looked normal. A neat lawn, a white picket fence, a blue Ford pickup truck in the driveway. The same one that was on the motel's security camera footage. Maria parked on the side of the road and watched the house for a few minutes. The lights were on, smoke was coming from the chimney, the owner was home. She checked her service weapon and headed for the porch. The doorbell rang loudly in the morning silence. A minute later, the door opened, and a man in his 30s appeared. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a tired face and reddened eyes. "Ryan McGee?" "Yes." "Detective Sanchez, Waco Police Department. May I come in?" "I'd like to ask you a few questions about Alex Taylor." The man's face changed. Something flashed in his eyes. Fear, guilt, anger. "She's dead, isn't she?" he said quietly. Maria nodded. "May I come in?" Ryan McGee stepped back, letting her into the house. And Detective Sanchez knew the case was solved. All that remained was to get a confession. Detective Maria Sanchez stood in Ryan McGee's living room, studying the surroundings. Everything looked too neat for someone who had just experienced a tragedy. There were no signs of grief, confusion, or shock. Only fatigue and something else she couldn't quite put her finger on. "When was the last time you saw Alex Taylor?" she asked, taking out her notebook. Ryan sat down on the sofa and rubbed his face with his hands. "Yesterday morning. Sunday." "Where exactly?" "We were at the lake. We spent the night there in a cabin. In the morning, we drove back to the city." "And what happened then?" Ryan paused, staring at the floor. Maria sensed that he was hiding something. 20 years on the job had taught her to read people. "We had a fight," he finally said. "A big fight." "What was it about?" "She lied to me. About herself. About who she really is." Maria wrote it down in her notebook. "Can you be more specific?" Ryan looked up, and she saw a mixture of pain and rage in his eyes. "She's a man, detective." "She was a man, and she hid it from me for 3 months." "I see. And how did you react to this discovery?" "Like any normal man would," Ryan snapped. "I was deceived." "Made to look like an idiot." Maria nodded, continuing to take notes. The motive was becoming obvious. A classic case of a hate crime disguised as relationship deception. "Where exactly did this argument take place?" "At a motel." "We stopped on the way, and then?" Ryan fell silent. Maria waited, giving him time. Silence often worked better than pressure. "Then I left," he said quietly. "I left her there." "Alive?" Another long pause. "Yes." Alive. Maria knew he was lying, but she didn't have enough evidence to make an arrest yet. She needed to gather more clues. Back at the station, Detective Sanchez gathered all the available information. Motel surveillance footage showed Ryan's blue pickup truck arriving at 12:30 p.m. on Sunday. The footage shows two people, a man and a woman, getting out of the car. But at 1:45 p.m., only the man leaves, and he drives away very quickly. Medical examiner Dr. Kim confirmed the preliminary findings. Death was caused by blunt force trauma to the head between 1 and 2 p.m. on Sunday. A single, powerful blow was delivered from right to left. The killer was right-handed and significantly taller than the victim. "It looks like a spur-of-the-moment killing," Dr. Kim said. "No signs of planning or attempts to cover up the crime." A classic case of passion, Sergeant Thompson brought the results of the phone records check. There are hundreds of messages from McGee on the victim's phone over the last 3 months. The last one was on Saturday night. After that, complete silence. Maria studied Alex and Ryan's correspondence. Months of romantic communication, plans for the future, tender words, no hint of deception or hidden motives. Alex was indeed hiding her past, but that did not justify murder. "We also found something interesting," Thompson added. "A camera in the motel parking lot caught McGee throwing something into a trash can. We checked it out. There were bloody gloves inside." It was the missing piece of evidence. Maria got an arrest warrant and went after Ryan McGee. Ryan did not resist arrest. When Maria read him his rights, he just nodded and asked to call his sister. At the station, he was placed in a holding cell, and an hour later, the official interrogation began. "Ryan McGee, do you understand the charges against you?" Maria began in the interrogation room. "Yes. Do you have a lawyer?" "No. I don't need one. You can request a public defender." "No need." Ryan stared at the table. "I did it. I killed her." Maria turned on the tape recorder. After 20 years on the job, she had seen many confessions, but this one was special. There was no regret in his voice, only exhaustion. "Tell me what happened at the motel on Sunday." Ryan sighed and began to speak. "We stopped to get gas. Alex went to the bathroom and I followed her. There, she spilled her makeup bag, and I saw the drugs, hormones." "What did you feel at that moment?" "Deception. I had been deceived for 3 months. I thought I had met a woman, but it turned out." He didn't finish the sentence. "What happened next?" "I asked what the drugs were. She started explaining that she used to be a man, but now she was a woman. That it didn't matter, that she was still the same person." Ryan clenched his fists. "But that's perverted. How could she do that to me?" "And you hit her?" "I didn't want to. I just couldn't control myself. I was kissing a man, making plans for the future with a man." There was no regret in Ryan's voice, only disgust and rage, which had not faded even a day after the murder. "What did you hit her with?" "I don't remember. Maybe my fist. She fell and hit her head on the wall. I thought she had just fainted." "But you didn't check on her or call an ambulance?" "No, I just left. I couldn't stand being around it." Maria turned off the tape recorder. The confession was complete and detailed. Ryan McGee killed Alex Taylor in a fit of transphobic rage and didn't even try to help her. News of Ryan McGee's arrest quickly spread throughout the city. Waco was a small place where everyone knew each other, and murder was always a big deal. But this case was special. Jen McGee arrived at the station as soon as she heard what had happened. Maria met her in the hallway, a short woman with tear-stained eyes, dressed in a teacher's school uniform. "Is it true?" Jen asked. "Did Ryan really kill that girl?" "I'm afraid so," he confessed. Jen sat down on a bench in the hallway, covering her face with her hands. "I don't understand. He's not that kind of person. He's never even hurt a fly." "People aren't always what they seem," Maria said softly, "especially when they're faced with things they don't understand." but to kill someone. What happened to him? Maria knew the answer, but wasn't sure Jen was ready to hear it. Ryan grew up in an environment where certain things were considered unacceptable, wrong, perverse. When his worldview collided with reality, he couldn't cope with the cognitive dissonance. "Can I see him?" Jen asked. "Of course." The meeting between brother and sister was painful. Ryan sat in his cell with his head down and didn't look up when Jen approached the bars. "Ryan, what have you done?" "I was deceived, Jen. They fooled me for 3 months." "And you killed a man because of that?" He finally raised his head. It wasn't a man. It was a perversion. Jen recoiled as if he had hit her. "My God, Ryan, what's wrong with you?" "Nothing's wrong with me. I'm normal." "But she's dead," Jen screamed. "You killed an innocent woman." "Not a woman." "Enough!" Jen clung to the bars. "Enough of this nonsense. You're a murderer, Ryan. A murderer." She turned and walked away without looking back. It was the last time the brother and sister would see each other. Jen never visited him again. By evening, journalists had gathered outside the courthouse. The story had gone viral. A transgender woman from California killed by a conservative Texan after meeting online. It was perfect fodder for the media. Maria gave an interview to a reporter from a local newspaper. Mr. McGee confessed to the murder of Alex Taylor. The motive was his inability to accept the victim's transgender identity. "Detective, how is the local community reacting to this tragedy?" "In different ways. Some are shocked by the brutality of the crime. Others believe that the victim was to blame for what happened. It was a sad truth." In conservative Waco, there were many people who, while disapproving of the murder, believed that Alex asked for it by hiding her past. But there were also those who understood the true essence of the tragedy. Reverend James Wilson of the local Methodist Church said in an interview, "God created us all in His image and likeness. No one deserves to die for who they are." Ryan McGee's trial took place 4 months later. The jury, made up of residents of conservative Texas, had to decide the fate of a man who killed a transgender woman in a fit of rage. The defense tried to present the case as an unintentional killing in the heat of passion, caused by the victim's deception. The prosecutor insisted on second-degree murder, emphasizing that Ryan had failed to help the dying woman and had tried to hide the evidence. Alex could no longer tell her side of the story, but her friend Tommy flew in from Los Angeles to testify about the character of the deceased. "Alex was a kind, honest person," he said in court. "Yes, she didn't tell me about her past right away." But does that deserve death? Ryan was sentenced to 20 years in prison. When the judge read the sentence, he showed no emotion. To the end, he considered himself a victim of deception, not the murderer of an innocent woman. After the trial, Detective Maria Sanchez sat in her office filling out the final documents on the case. Another crime had been solved, another criminal convicted, but she felt no sense of victory. Alex Taylor dreamed of love and acceptance. She found a man who she thought could be her partner, but her fear of rejection made her keep quiet about her past, and when the truth came out, it was too late. Ryan McGee was looking for traditional love with a traditional woman. When reality did not match his expectations, he chose violence instead of understanding. Now he will spend the best years of his life in prison. Two people who could have found happiness if society had been more tolerant and understanding. If people knew how to talk about difficult things without anger and prejudice. Maria closed the case file and put it away in the archive. The story of Alex Taylor and Ryan McGee was over, but similar tragedies were happening every day across the country. People who couldn't accept differences, people who were afraid to be themselves, people who paid with their lives for the right to love. On the table lay a photo of Alex from her social media profile. A beautiful woman with intelligent eyes and an enigmatic smile. A person who deserved to live, to love, and to be loved. Detective Sanchez turned off the lights in her office and went home. Tomorrow would be a new day, with new cases and perhaps new tragedies. But the memory of Alex Taylor would remain with her forever, a reminder of what happens when fear and hatred triumph over love and understanding. The story of Alex and Ryan became a symbol of how prejudice can lead to tragedy, but it also showed that even in the most conservative places, there are people willing to fight for justice and equality. Love should not kill. Differences should not lead to violence. And every person deserves the right to be themselves without fear for their life.